morning.
Good morning.
Happy May.
Yes,
Happy May. And it feels like December, at least around these
exactly.
parts. It's crazy. I had to turn my heat back on. I said, what in the
Look,
world?
you see me.
I didn't have it on yesterday, but I got up this morning. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to knock the chill off the house, at least for a little bit. But then normally, well, if it gets warmer because it's sunny outside, just open the damn windows. It's colder in the house than it is outside. It's ridiculous. I can't. I
Isn't
don't.
it?
It's ridiculous. Make it make sense. But how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are
Yeah,
you?
I am well. I am well. Hanging in here. Coming upon the end of a semester, and yeah,
Oh yeah, graduation and whatnot.
yeah, yeah. That'll be coming up shortly. So we have. I think I got 10. I think there are 10 that are graduating. So excited for them. Excited for them.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, let's get this party started. I feel like I need a nap and I just got up, so I don't understand. But anyway, and I got my tea. Let me sip. Let me sip. Maybe that'll help me out a little bit. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Saturday morning tea. Here we brew up the hottest topics in healthcare. We discuss health information, news, education, how it feels like December and May, certification tips, and entrepreneurship and revenue cycle at large. And as you come in, don't forget to hit the thumbs up or like button and or share this uh, podcast with your friend. You know, sharing is caring. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, the founder and senior education director of the Professional Reimbursement Network, LLC, where coding education is key. And PRN is a healthcare compliance consultancy located in Cincinnati, Ohio, that specializes in revenue cycle and regulatory compliance and education. Now, let me ask you, do you know what it takes to be a certified marketable medical coder? Do you? Well, before I introduce my co host, let me share with you information on a free email course on the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder. Are you interested in medical coding, but not sure where to start? And scared of wasting time and resources? Let me help you with the right steps to become a certified marketable medical coder. Learn more at bit.ly/5stepscoder. I missed that little music. I ain't heard it in a minute. All right. If you are interested in getting more information about the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder, check the video description for the link. At least I think it's there. I've changed the descriptions. If not, I'll put it there. All right. Joining me today is my partner in success, my co-host, Mr. Jesse, the registered trademark. Put some respect on his name, the coding nurse. Sir, introduce yourself and tell the folks all about you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse. I live in Philadelphia. I have been in healthcare for a long time. In 2014, I left the bedside and transitioned into risk adjustment. Since then, I moved around a lot. Then in 2020, I created a company called the Coding Nurse LLC, where I help nurses and other people in healthcare with a clinical background transition into the wonderful world of HIM.
Sir, you should call yourself Mr. Pivot. That's Mr. Pivot, because you will pivot. But how's all that working out for you?
It's coming along. I have a student who's finishing up. Actually, Monday's our last class.
Okay. Nice, nice. Be like, ooh, you be breathing a sigh of relief when they survive you, right?
Mm,
Because sometimes it be rocky in the beginning, like, ooh, ooh, they don't know what they done got into, and you don't know what you done got
mm,
into. Be like, Lord,
Facts.
like let's pray every day, every day, every day. All right. Good morning, Tanika. Good morning. Good morning. All right, all right. So what do I want to talk about? Oh, so before we jump in, let me remind you that you can join in and add to the conversation. Yes. So don't be shy. Your opinion matters and is welcome here, especially today. Friends, please use the chat. That's how we have these ongoing communications between us and you. If you have a question, only thing I ask is that you put Q first, so that we know it's a question for us and we don't miss it and it don't get shuffled in back and forth conversation with everybody else. Now, for those who are just joining us or watching the replay, today we are talking when your EHR workflow becomes a legal question. But first, let's get into our church announcements, shall we? Shall we? Hey, 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 boom, boom, boom. Hey. Or with all the regulations and rollback on civil rights and all. Ooh. I be looking at Martin Luther King like, sir, do you know? Do you know what's happening in these streets today? Woo. All right, all right. All right. So, my church announcement for today is real simple. So this past week we had the Healthcare Compliance Association Compliance Institute. It was the 30th annual Compliance Institute. And the OIG, the Department of Justice, members from HHS, all the folks are usually present and speaking and they're doing sessions, but then they're providing updates and all of the things. So the OIG informed us, who was in the house, that on April 28th, a federal court in Newark, New Jersey sentenced opioid manufacturer Purdue Pharma and ordered them to pay over $5 billion in criminal penalties for their role in fueling the opioid epidemic. $5 billion. Ooh. And that's a lot. That's a lot. This happened from 2007 to 2017, where this company knowingly marketed highly addictive opioid products to prescribers they had good reason to believe were writing prescriptions with no legitimate medical purpose, and paid kickbacks. They did all kinds of stuff. So not only were they doing all of this, they were paying kickbacks to keep those prescriptions flowing. They wanted to make sure that the people who were prescribing had a direct line to the folks. They were getting addicted to all of these products, and they just wanted to make sure that that system and that machine that they had generated was up and running and doing all the things it needed to do, which is crazy work. But hey, it's what they had going on. It was what they was doing. And again, crazy work. Some of the reactions from the Department of Justice and the OIG and those who were involved in this was, their hearts went out, of course, to the families who were involved, who got caught up in the opioid pandemic or epidemic. I'm sorry. but they were also real firm in making sure that they're still enforcing the laws. They're still going to come after these companies. I guess there's still possibly several more companies in the works that are putting folks at risk. This is a public health problem that, really needs to be rectified. And it's just sad. The administrator, Terrence Cole of the Drug Enforcement Agency or Administration, DEA, he stated their actions fueled a surge in addiction and cost many Americans lives. The prescription opioid epidemic directly paved the way for today's fentanyl crisis. And the DEA remains committed to working with registrants, communities, faith-based organizations, and schools to address the damage and end the opioid epidemic that has gripped our nation for far too long. So they defrauded the DEA, they prioritized profits over patients, and they helped engineer one of the worst public health crises this country has ever seen. And again, that dollar figure, $5 billion. And the Department of Justice basically calls it one of the most important corporate enforcement cases that was ever brought. So that was one of the things that they brought to us during the Compliance Institute. And I wanted to share that information with you if you hadn't already heard. Mr. Jesse, did you have any church announcement?
I just had a question. I don't think that's the first verdict that they've had, is it? I remember that.
They had some other, because I think they done filed bankruptcy in part of their things, but they've had some incremental, but this was the latest one that came apart. So during that time, once the investigation started, and it started a while back, they just been chomping off and working through the process to ultimately get to this verdict. I think this may be the final one, but who knows? They're the way they're talking, they're still enforcing and still investigating folks. So there may be more to come as it relates to this.
Right,
but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, in the press release, they list like the whole timeline of all of the things that have happened regarding pharma or Purdue Pharma and other organizations as well. So,
yeah. Tanika has a question about this. She said, are they leaving out the pharmaceutical companies on this?
Are they leaving out the pharmaceutical companies on this? No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay, Bo. Not at all. It's crazy.
Yeah. So my church announcement is a comment. I listened into the AHIMA town hall 2 weeks ago. And I just
did it get your CEU?
Actually, I didn't even look.
Oh.
But I just want to say that I called it years ago because a lady asked a question about the CDIP and the CCDS, and the response that the woman gave from AHIMA was exactly what I expected them to say, and it amounted
to
folks are in trouble if they think that, because what she said was that all options are on the table and that things are still being considered. Now, what they didn't say is all things are on the table, but we're going to make sure that the CDIP remains. That's not what she said.
Mm-mm.
So that means that it's on the chopping block.
Right, because why wouldn't you encourage, or why wouldn't you fight for, or why?
But did I not? As soon as they announced that they were buying,
you said it. You said it. Oh, what are we now? Jesse 60, everybody else 1. I don't know. And the crazy part to me is folks just been grumbling about all of this stuff under their breath, but nobody, why are you now? This has been 2 years. Why are you now having this conversation? Like, that was my top of mind when we first heard about this. Well, wait a minute. You got competing interests here. How are you going to mitigate this? What we going to do?
And they have never, when they being a HEMA, has never gotten out in front of it, never issued a statement, never said anything to reassure people who hold the
their
CIP.
members.
Exactly. So
yeah, I don't know, y'all. Y'all gotta, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. We gotta do better. I think I talked about the 40% going away, which that was a whole bunch of energy just wasted.
I mean, how long did they go back and forth? Years.
That was a whole bunch of energy wasted. But I do appreciate I can't think of his first name, Cello, our new CEO, with taking the time to just sit down and have a conversation with this group who came up with the 40%. Why would that not be the first thing that you would do? It's like, let's get a better understanding and appreciation for where this came from, why y'all thought this was okay. And because there was no discussion about it. It was, this is what it's going to be, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Everybody was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because we got hit with it in the House of Delegates, like, as a side note, like, it just slid in. It's like, wait a minute, what? And then next thing you know, it trickled out to everybody else. It was like, are we not going to talk about this? So I do appreciate, because he mentioned that he was going to have a conversation with them. And lo and behold, after the conversation, it went away. So it probably could have went away a few years ago. Somebody would have just, okay. Yeah. All of this during Hip Week, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a never ending conversation during Hip Week. You never know what kind of bomb's gonna drop during Hip Week. Oh goodness. Yeah.
All I'm going to say, just to land my plane, is that we have been talking about since the beginning being, a marketable medical coder. Like, people better find a lane and get in it sooner rather than later.
Swim deep. Go touch the ground. Go touch the bottom. Get all of the things. Because, yeah. It's crazy out here. It's crazy.
It ain't looking too good.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Where there are opportunities, there seem to be things that are just falling by the wayside. And it's read the room, folks. Read the room. All right. Any other announcements?
No.
Well, let the tea spilling begin. So again, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Saturday morning tea, where we serve up the real talk our profession needs. We pour up something warm, something real, sometimes something hot, and something that genuinely matters for your career in health information management, medical coding, and compliance. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, with my partner in success, the coding nurse. And if you're new here, welcome. We meet every Saturday morning, or at least to the best of our ability, to demystify medical coding, billing, and everything that keeps healthcare revenue flowing, and talk about the things in healthcare that actually matter for your career, your compliance, and your paycheck. And to my returning friends, thank you for being here. Get your cup and come on in the room. Now, before we get started, I want to ask you to do something. I want you to stop just for a moment. Stop scrolling. stop multitasking. Yeah, I'm calling somebody out who already told me they was multitasking. Stop whatever is running in the background of your brain right now. And I know that's hard because I'm already thinking about the stuff I need to get at the grocery store, but nevertheless, because what I'm about to share with you today is the kind of thing that quietly changes how you think about your work. And I do not want you to miss a single word of it. So here's what I need you to hear. The documentation you contribute to every single day is no longer just a clinical record. Now, most of us knew that a long time ago. It's more than just a clinical record. It is also a legal document. It has multi purposes and multi uses. However, it's also not just a coding source document. It's a little bit more than that. It's not just a compliance checkbox on someone else's audit list. It can be and increasingly is a legal exhibit, which is a little different. All right, so let that sink in for a minute. A False Claims Act case, and we are going to unpack every layer of that phrase in a moment, recently challenged not whether a diagnosis was clinically wrong, but how that diagnosis was generated and documented using automated tools built right inside the electronic health record. The documentation workflow itself was on trial. The process, the tool, the clicks, all of that on trial. Now, I know this might sound heavy, but here is the truth. We all know it. It could all be so simple if we understand what is at stake. And that is exactly what today's Saturday morning tea is here for. So go ahead, get your cup of whatever it is that you drink. Again, no judgment here. Get comfortable and let's get into it. So today's conversation is inspired by part 4 of a 5-part series that's published in the RAC Monitor, and that is the Recovery Audit Contractor Monitor. And it's one of the leading compliance and coding intelligence publications in our field. The article is titled Pulling Back the Curtain When Documentation Becomes a Legal Question. And it was written by Penny Jefferson, who is a nurse. She's certified in CDI, she's certified in coding, and she's also certified in revenue cycle. She has a whole bunch of certifications and initials behind her name. It looks like alphabet soup back there. Now, in the first 3 parts of this series, Penny walked us through how payers analyze claims data, how they identify cases for additional scrutiny, and how they interpret the medical record during clinical review. Part 4 takes us somewhere new, which is why I wanted to bring it to our attention, and critically important, because sometimes the scrutiny of documentation does not stop with payer review. Sometimes the documentation process itself becomes the focus of a regulatory investigation or a legal challenge. And when that happens, the question shifts entirely. It is no longer, was this diagnosis clinically valid? The new question is, how was this diagnosis generated and documented in the medical record? That shift from clinical accuracy to documentation process is the central insight of our episode today. And it affects everyone who touches the medical record: physicians, nurses, advanced practice providers, dietitians, therapists, coders, and CDI professionals alike. But before we begin, let's make sure we are all on the same page with a few key terms for this episode. We already know, well, most of us, CDI, clinical documentation integrity, is the process of ensuring medical records accurately and completely reflect a patient's clinical status and the care provided. Now, your EHR is the electronic health record, and it's the digital version of a patient's medical chart used by providers across the care team. Your EMR, or electronic medical record, is similar to the EHR, and it's often used interchangeably, but technically, EMR refers to the digital record within a single practice or system. BPA is best practice advisory, and it's an automated alert or pop-up when an EHR or EMR system designed within an EHR or EMR system designed to guide provider decision making. We all know FCA, which is the False Claims Act. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Key TAM, a provision of the False Claims Act allowing private individuals or relators to file lawsuits on behalf of the government and receive a portion of any recovery, i.e., the whistleblowers of the world. I went to a session about when the whistle blows, what to do with your whistleblowers in the house. It was hilarious. But anyway, very, very informative. Um, we know AHIMA, American Health Information Management Association. We know AI, artificial intelligence, which is the technology enabling machines to simulate human intelligence processes, including learning and problem solving. OIG is the Office of Inspector General, and CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So let's talk about the False Claims Act case at the heart of this particular article. A quick note of historical context: the False Claims Act, or FCA, has a fascinating history. It goes way back, further than I even knew. But it has since transitioned and evolved into the government's most powerful tool for combating fraud against federal programs, including Medicare and Medicaid. One of the most important features is the key TAM provision, and that's Latin for who as well. And it refers to the ability of a private individual, who is called a relator, to file a lawsuit on behalf of the federal government. If the case results in a recovery, the relator can receive a percentage of the proceeds. So you know these proceeds or these amounts are in the millions and sometimes billions of dollars. Again, this is why these cases are sometimes called whistleblower suits. So here's what happened. In United States, ex-relator Smith versus Mercy Health, the relator, a private individual pursuing this case under the key TAM provisions of the False Claims Act, alleged that hospital documentation practices related to malnutrition diagnoses, boy, that malnutrition comes up everywhere, don't it? Resulted in the submission of false claims to Medicare. Now, malnutrition is a significant coding topic in our world. A malnutrition diagnosis can have a substantial impact on a claim. It affects the DRG, or diagnosis related groups, assignment. It increases the hierarchical condition category, or HCC, risk score in value-based care arrangements. It affects reimbursement. That's important context. Here's what the case centered on. The hospital used a feature within their EMR called the Best Practice Advisory, or BPA. You may know these as the pop-up alerts in your EHR. Now, here's how the workflow functioned. When a dietitian documented clinical indicators suggesting possible malnutrition, a BPA, that alert, would fire when the physician opened the patient's chart. The alert gave the physician two options: either add a malnutrition diagnosis to the patient's problem list or decline the recommendation. The relator's argument that BPA was functioning as a leading query. Now, what is a leading query? Let's go to our professional standard. Remember, AHIMA has provided guidelines for achieving a compliant query practice. And most recently, I think was updated in 2019. These guidelines have been our industry standard for physician query compliance for years. AHIMA's guidelines are clear. A compliant query must be non-leading. It must present the relevant clinical indicators that prompted the question. It must not direct the provider toward a specific diagnosis. The allegation was that the BPA, by presenting only the option to accept or decline a malnutrition diagnosis without presenting supporting clinical indicators in a compliant query format, was directing physicians toward a diagnosis in a non-compliant way. And it was baked right into their EHR workflow. And here is the most critical takeaway from this entire case. The dispute was not primarily about whether the patients actually had malnutrition. The patients may have been perfectly documented, clinically valid malnutrition cases. The central question was whether the process used to generate and document the diagnosis was compliant with regulatory expectations and industry guidance. As the case progressed, the defendants challenged both the documentation practices at issue and raised broader constitutional questions about whether private entities or relators can legally pursue enforcement actions on behalf of the government under the False Claims Act key 10 provisions. The federal government declined to intervene, leaving the relator to pursue the case independently. In 2026, the case was ultimately dismissed after significant litigation. But the lesson does not disappear with the dismissal. Penny Jefferson frames it this way: documentation workflows within EMRs may themselves become the focus of scrutiny when diagnoses ultimately support reimbursement claims. And she adds this: documentation may be challenged not only on clinical grounds, but also based on how the documentation supporting the claim was generated in the medical record. For organizations building increasingly automated documentation workflows within EHRs, which is most of us, the case is a reminder that the processes used to generate diagnoses may eventually be examined just as closely as the diagnoses themselves. It could all be so simple if we get the workflow right from the start. So let's talk about EHR automation, because this is where the rubber meets the road and our daily practice. Your modern EHRs come loaded with tools designed to make documentation faster and more efficient. And I want to be clear, these tools are not inherently bad. In fact, many of them are incredibly valuable, some with some question marks, but we're talking about templated documentation that provides structural note formats. We're talking about copy forward functionality that pulls prior documentation into current notes, which are compliance officers' nightmares, but I guess providers' dreams. Automated prompts and best practice advisories, which are our BPAs, that alert providers to potential diagnoses. CDS, or clinical decision support, which alerts that surface guideline-based recommendations. Structured data entry fields that standardize how information is captured, and increasingly AI-assisted documentation tools that can listen to provider-patient encounters and generate draft notes in real time. Now, these technologies improve documentation efficiency. They can help clinicians recognize diagnoses supported by clinical indicators. They reduce documentation burden on providers who are already stretched thin. But they also introduce something that requires our careful professional attention: documentation, transparency, and accountability. Here's the fundamental tension that Penny identifies in the article. External reviewers, payer clinicians, auditors, regulators, and courts do not observe the internal workflow that produced documentation in the medical record. They see the final documentation as it appears in the record. They see what was documented, not how it got there. And every single entry in that medical record ultimately becomes part of the narrative that external reviewers interpret. The principle that has not changed and will not change is when automation assists in the creation of documentation, the responsibility for verifying that documentation accurately reflects the patient's clinical condition remains with the individual signing the note. And that was paraphrased from the article. The tool can assist, the clinician still owns the content. The BPA can prompt, the physician still validates the diagnosis. The AI can draft the note, the provider still has to sign it. And I want to make sure we are all clear about who this principle applies to. And it's not just the physicians. Penny's article is explicit. Modern medical records include documentation created by multiple members of the care team: nurses, advanced practice providers, your nurse practitioners, your physician assistants, dietitians, therapists, coders, yes, that means us, CDI specialists, everyone who touches the medical record contributes to the clinical narrative that external reviewers later evaluate. And here is the practical implication for coders. When you see a diagnosis in the medical record that came from a templated entry, a copy forward note, or an EHR alert prompt, your role is not just to find the diagnosis. Your role includes evaluating whether there is a clear clinical reasoning in the record to support it. Penny says this beautifully. Checkbox documentation and templated entries may support efficiency, but they cannot replace clear clinical reasoning. External reviewers often focus less on the presence of documentation elements and more on whether the record clearly explains why a particular diagnosis or level of care was appropriate. That is the standard, not just is it documented, but does the record explain why? Yes. So here is the part of the conversation that I want you to really sit with. We just talked about AI being used on the provider side to assist with the documentation and to prompt diagnoses and to generate notes. But keep in mind, payers are using AI too, and their AI is looking at your claims. A 2026 article in Health Affairs, which is one of the most respected health policy publications in the country by Mello and colleagues, described what they call a, quote, AI arms race in health insurance utilization review, end quote. Health insurers are routinely analyzing large volumes of claims data using predictive models designed to identify utilization patterns that may warrant further scrutiny. These systems can flag claims that appear inconsistent with expected clinical patterns and trigger additional medical review automatically. So on one side of the table, your EHR's AI is helping generate documentation, but on the other side, the payer's AI is analyzing that documentation for patterns. The article from Health Affairs raises legitimate concerns about transparency, algorithmic bias, and the role of human oversight in coverage decisions. Policy experts have warned that automation in utilization review may amplify errors if algorithmic systems operate without appropriate clinical oversight. It's humans, the people. Remember, we talked about that, the people. These concerns are beginning to attract the attention of policymakers. And that brings us to our next topic. Friends, the good news, and there is always good news on the Saturday morning tea, is that the antidote to the AI arms race is exactly what great coders and CDI professionals already do every day. Accuracy, specificity, clinical reasoning, your compliant documentation. You cannot out-automate integrity. Let me say that again. You cannot out-automate integrity, and that is your professional advantage. Now, several states have begun introducing legislation to govern the role of AI in healthcare decision-making. And while we are going to focus just on California because it is the most active in the space, I want to be clear. This is a national conversation. California has enacted 3 particularly relevant pieces of legislation. Bill AB 3030 in 2024 focuses on artificial intelligence in healthcare services. And it requires healthcare providers using generative AI to communicate with patients to disclose when AI was used. Bill AB 489, also in 2024, focuses on utilization review and AI oversight. And it addresses oversight of algorithmic tools used in healthcare decision-making, including utilization management. And Bill SB 1120, which was also in 2024, which was a busy time in California, focuses on AI oversight in healthcare decision-making. And it requires transparency and accountability when algorithmic systems are used in healthcare operations and decision-making. So what do these 3 laws have in common? They all reflect the same core regulatory message. AI tools must support clinical judgment, not replace it. Disclosure, Oversight, accountability, transparency. These are no longer aspirational values in healthcare AI. They are becoming legal expectations. And while these laws currently focus on patient communication and utilization review, the regulatory trend is unmistakable. As AI tools become embedded in EHR documentation workflows, compliance expectations will follow. Healthcare professionals who understand this landscape now will be significantly better positioned when federal level regulation catches up. And at some point, it will. So let's bring this down to the floor. Let's talk about what all of this means for you, the medical coder, the CDI professional, the health information leader listening to us right now. I have 5 questions I want to put on the table. Use these in your team meetings. Use these in your compliance conversation or your own professional reflection. Question 1. If a BPA or clinical decision support alert in your organization's EHR prompted a physician to add a diagnosis, and that diagnosis was coded and billed, how would you know whether the workflow used to generate it was compliant? Think about it. Do you know how the BPAs in your EHR are designed? Do they present clinical indicators, or do they simply present the option to accept or decline a diagnosis? Do they meet the spirit of AHIMA's query guidelines? This is a question worth asking your CDI team and your compliance department, because if auditors or investigators ask it, and this case shows that they might, you want to be ready and already have the answer to those questions. Question number 2. AHIMA's query guidelines have been in place for years, but EHR technology is introducing new forms of prompts that may not look like traditional queries. How should we evaluate whether automated EHR tools meet the spirit of compliant query standards? Well, this is a conversation that needs to happen at the intersection of your IT department, your CDI team, your compliance officers, and your health information professionals. The Smith versus Mercy Health case suggests that the word query may now extend beyond the traditional written or electronic queries sent by a CDI specialist to any tool that prompts provider documentation decisions. So know your workflows. Question 3. As AI-powered payer review tools analyze claims at scale, how does that change the way medical coders should think about coding consistency, specificity, and documentation quality, not just on individual encounters, but across patterns of claims? So payer AI is not looking at one claim in isolation. It is looking at patterns across hundreds, thousands, or millions of claims. If your organization consistently codes a particular diagnosis at a significantly higher rate than comparable organizations, that pattern gets flagged. Specificity is your best defense. Code to the highest level of specificity the documentation supports, period. Question 4. The Smith versus Mercy Health case was ultimately dismissed, but the compliance lesson remains. How does your organization currently audit or assess the compliance of EHR documentation workflows, including these BPAs, decision support alerts, and templated entries? If your organization does not have a formal process for reviewing the compliance of EHR workflows, not just the codes that come out of them, but the processes that generate the documentation in the first place, this case is your call to action. Bring this conversation to your compliance leadership. It could all be so simple, but it starts with asking the question. And last, question 5. With states leading on AI transparency legislation, what proactive steps should HI departments take now before federal regulation catches up to ensure that AI-assisted documentation tools are being used in a transparent, accountable, and compliant manner? Now, don't wait for the regulation to land on your desk. Start the conversations now. Identify every AI-assisted tool in your documentation environment. Understand its design. Evaluate its compliance implications. Document your governance process. HI professionals who lead this conversation proactively will be invaluable to their organizations. And I call this out to organizations and your compliance committees. Um, Best practice is to have compliance committees that are interdisciplinary, where you have all of these people already sitting at the table. And so it makes it a little easier to possibly have these conversations because, again, the people are already sitting there. And just, do um, oh, I just lost the word for it, where you kind of touch base to see what you're hearing about the industry. What pieces and components of our EHRs or EMRs are automated, and do we understand those processes? And having the conversation of what that looks like. This would be a wonderful agenda item on your next committee meetings. So let's land this plane. Mr. Jesse, did you have anything? I can't see your face on this side.
Well, look, you didn't say a whole lot. So I had stuff to say from the beginning, but so the first thing is who was this Smith? Because Smith sounds like a provider to me, because I cannot see a CDI specialist or a coder bringing that kind of suit. I really can't, because I think that Smith was a doctor. So,
but Smith could have been a doctor, either well versed and knowledgeable about that process, or maybe a physician advisor in the process, or a physician advisor in CDI. I don't know, but yeah, go ahead.
So, I definitely think that is some kind of physician involved. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the more AI comes along and the more you hear these kinds of stories, AI is going to be the downfall of healthcare, because like this article, like it all really, it sounds nice. It really, really does. But it doesn't really get to the heart. And the heart of the matter really is all of this is driven by money and productivity, all of it. And unless you address that, none of this really matters, because people in healthcare rely on AI all the time. And I've been talking about this for years. It's no longer a tool. It runs the machine. We're the tools. It's a whole different entity now. And people are trying to catch up, but the real problem again is when these people are designing these systems, the right people are not involved in the conversation.
That's true.
And it has always been like that. Yep. And until the right people get involved in the planning stages, in the implementation stages, because it is a whole lot better and easier to prevent a problem than it is to fix a problem. And I just think that in this day and age, that when you work inpatient, especially for coders, like coders are not even involved in the query process at all. So
they have to send it up.
Exactly. And they just want to they have to meet their production at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's just out of control, and it's becoming a runaway train, and it's going to come crashing down one day, and and everybody's going to be pointing the finger, but everybody's seeing it happen. Everybody's seeing the train getting faster and faster and running towards the wall, but nobody's really having the real conversations to stop it.
Yeah, so my take on the article and why I thought it was important enough to address in a Saturday morning tea is, to your point, the train is gone, but Did folks check all the things to make sure the train was good before it left the station? And the answer is no. There's still all of these things. And if you really think about, I mean, again, this case was dismissed, but the outcome and the conversation as a result of the case, it still lingers. And everybody who is familiar with the case can walk away and be like, okay, well, maybe this is something that we do need to take a deeper look at. Is this something that we need to kind of, figure out? Because as it was so eloquently stated, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the provider's responsibility to make sure that all of this is accurate. But let's be real clear. How many providers actually can stand 10 toes down on what was documented if you got all kinds of stuff coming into it from AI or copy, cut, and paste and all of the things? I would feel, as a provider, I would feel some kind of way. Like, because one, who has the time? Again, and maybe that's part of their documentation burden that that they speak of all the time, to really go through and say, okay, I have looked at, evaluated this documentation, and I support all of the things on here. 9 times out of 10, the bill is gone before dude or ma'am even had an opportunity to sign it. So who you want me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm responsible, but I didn't even get a chance to evaluate it before you sent it off. And once you send it off, it's gone. It's subject to being picked off for review. Period.
But the thing is, they don't care about that, because can I tell you, I've had jobs where I have had when I do my review, I've had to undo billing and then send a note to billing to have it sent back for processing.
I see. That's crazy. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Because in this day and age, I mean, I just, and we've talked about this several times, the productivity, the whole production of it from both the provider side, from the revenue cycle side, all of the things. This is, and the whole reason and rhyme and reason for all of this is the almighty dollar. Cue the OJs right now.
And I mean, I get on here and I clown the physicians all the time for their compassionate sacrifice, but honestly, they don't have it easy.
They don't.
Especially now. I mean,
Not now, because you basically it's 3-card money over here, because you don't know what's in stuff, but you ultimately you're responsible. And so when you get hit with the request for the records, or even get hit with an actual FCA, you got the big eye, like what you talking about? And you might really don't know what you're talking about because you haven't had the opportunity. Because you haven't had the opportunity to do anything about it.
Now, the idea or just the thought that information can be sent to a provider with no clinical indicators is just wild to me.
Wow.
I don't know how anybody thought that was a good idea. I don't know. Who they ask? Somebody?
They didn't ask anybody. They ain't asked nobody. They was like, you know what? Let me be the first person to make my mark. Look what I got. Here we go. This is going to do it.
But this all comes it all comes back to one word, the acronym MEAT. People think that I don't care how big healthcare gets, it's always going to come down to that.
And that's applicable not only just in HCCs, it's in all of it.
Oh, it's everywhere. Exactly.
Everywhere.
And it's just like you said, like when it gets to the payer, they don't care. They're looking at what does this what do these notes say? Is it clear? Can we really deduce this? Can we get A from B or B from A? And if we can't, it's a no. Look, what did Randy Jackson say on American Idol? It's a no for me, dog.
That is a no for me.
And and listen, I have been on both sides, and I'm telling you, and then because talked to a couple about maybe a month or so ago, I talked to my former CDI manager, and I was talking to her about some of the claims that I had seen for, while I was doing DRG validation. And
Mhm.
she was like, well, a lot of these companies, they have automated denial. So I said, well, listen, I said, where I was working, they were not automated. I said, trust me, I wrote out every one that I sent out, because you can't just, even there, you had to have clinical reasons why you were saying no, this does not fit. You have to have clinical reasons. I mean, you just can't be like, oh well, we're just denying it. And
Because
when you
that's and it's if they're only relying on the AI generated denials, that's going to be a whole hot mess, because we all know about the hallucinations, the hiccup, all of the problems that they get in that. So at some point, there still needs to be some human validation of what could potentially be a denial. Otherwise, if you just sending that stuff out willy nilly, the credibility is going to just tank, because nobody's going to believe. Nobody's going to. It's like
but
Pinocchio.
but
It's
you know what though?
ridiculous.
But how they're allowed to get away with, the reason why they can get away with it is because a lot of these, like, very few places are big institutions that have layers and layers of staff.
Mm,
Look at these small facilities who may not have the staff. They might not have a dedicated appeals department where
mhm,
that's all they do. And it's all about it's a numbers game. And
mhm.
it's a time limit. If you don't get to it within a certain amount of time, whether they're wrong, you lose it. You
You
got to
lose it.
eat it,
That's
right?
right. That's
And I
right.
think that, and the prevailing thought for facilities is that it's intentional for that reason, and it
But
does work for some
that is
places.
a different spin on that, because even if they send all of this AI generated stuff, if you don't take the time to go through and look at it to verify, even once you receive it, to be like, this is
Right.
foolishness or whatever, and send the stuff back, you gonna eat it, even if it's wrong.
That's right.
Because you didn't take the time to send the stuff back within the time frame that they allow. You got to at least be engaged in the process. When it hits, oh,
That's
let's
right.
make sure we getting all this stuff. We could look at it, whatever, but make sure we send this stuff back so that you have some leg to stand on for appeal. Other than that, you've exhausted all your stuff with just not sending it.
And there's another little tidbit. When you are working in DRG auditing, if you don't, because I forget the name, but they track everything. If
Mhm,
you don't have a certain number of um recoveries, that's what they call them. You don't have a
mhm,
certain amount, if your recovery percentage is, because they have a benchmark for that too,
mhm.
you have to notify your manager, because basically what they feel is like you're getting easy claims, or that there should be more that you can get from it. Like, there, you have to look for denials.
Wow.
It's something out here. Let me tell you. As somebody who has been in it, I can tell you on both sides, it's a
Wow.
game. It's a game.
And just all the money flowing back and forth, flowing back and forth. Wow.
Hmm.
All right, all right. Well, let's land this plane. We almost at time. Here's what I need you to take away from today's episode. Again, documentation is not just a clinical record, it is a legal document, a compliance artifact, and increasingly evidence and regulatory and legal proceedings. The documentation workflow that generates a diagnosis can be scrutinized just as closely as the diagnosis itself. So know your EHR workflows. The individual who signs the documentation owns it, regardless of what automation assisted in creating it. That principle will not change. And AI is being used on both sides of the table. Your best defense is accuracy, specificity, and clear clinical reasoning. The regulatory landscape around AI in healthcare is evolving rapidly, so stay informed and stay ahead of it as best as you can. And here's what I want you to remember above all else. You are not just a coder. You are not just a CDI specialist. You are not just someone who assigns codes to a chart. You are a steward of clinical narrative. The work you do every day, when it is done with accuracy, integrity, and clinical reasoning, is the work that protects patients, providers, and organizations. It cannot be so simple. It really could. When every person who touches the medical record understands the weight of that responsibility, the documentation environment becomes exactly what it should be: a clear, complete, defensible, accurate clinical story. Now, here's your call to action. And I mean that in every sense of the word. So, first, read the full article. It's very interesting to see the thoughts behind why they feel your documentation becomes, or how you got your documentation becomes, a legal question. And the whole 5-part series is really worth your time if you have that time. But this one, make sure you read this one. Number 2, share this episode with one colleague or a coder or a CDI specialist or a compliance officer who needs to hear this conversation. Just send it to your compliance people. Let them check this out and let them start the conversations if you don't feel like you can. Number 3, ask one question in your organization this week. How does our EHR workflow generate documentation? And is that process compliant? Actually, that's 2 questions, right? Number 4, join our Patreon community for deeper resources, implementation guides, and exclusive Q&A sessions. You can join us at bit.ly/the PRN Sippers, or you can also just click on our QR code. It's right there on the screen. All right, or take a picture of our QR code that's right there on the screen. Number 5, visit us at ohioprn.com for upcoming education opportunities. Number 6, like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It takes 30 seconds, and it means the world to this community. And number 7, come back next week. Come back next Saturday. Pour your cup, and we will be here. Mr. Jesse, do you have any remaining closing thoughts?
No.
Okay. I love that optimistic spirit. So thank you all for spending your Saturday morning with us. Thank you for investing in your professional growth. And thank you for caring enough about this work to keep learning. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, reminding you that when we lead with knowledge and integrity, we can navigate any challenge. Right? So remember, be safe, be kind, and don't wish for it, work for it. Until next time, take care. Have a good weekend.